Hello, everyone. Well, one person. Um, we're just gonna wait for our other guests to join us. Okay. Sorry. Partners, institutes, and Palestinian Youth Movement. Okay, we have PYM here. Here we go. Okay, so we have the Palestinian Youth Movement joining us right now. We're going to be waiting for the Canadian Arab Institute. Okay, we have Nour. Canadian Arab Institute, if you could please request to join. Hi, Noor.
Hi.
I'm just going to
Hi
wait.
there.
We just have one more partner joining us, the Canadian Arab Institute, and then I'm going to start introductions.
Of course.
Okay. So perfect. Okay, Canadian Arab Institute is joining us.
Hi.
Hi, Shireen.
Hi, Dalya.
Okay, so we have everyone here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We already have 225 viewers. Amazing. So my name is Dalya Masri, and I am based in Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada. I'm a journalist, and most of my reporting is on human rights and Palestine analysis. We are also joined with our two other partners today. Since this live is in partnership with the Toronto Palestine Film Festival, our other two partners are the Canadian Arab Institute and the Palestinian Youth Movement. So they're going to be joining us here with their screens off. And we're going to be moving on to our first guest. Her name is Nour, and Nour is currently in Gaza right now.
Yes.
And Nour, I'm gonna say her last name, Nour al Saqa. She's in Gaza right now, and I'm gonna give it over to Nour to give us a little introduction about yourself, and just kind of the area you're in before we get into it.
Of course. My name's Nour. I'm a Palestinian from Gaza. I study radio, television, and film in Turkey, Ankara to be specific. And I came back to Gaza in February because the second semester has been announced to be online. So I came here, and 2 months later, this happened. So here we are.
Thank you for sharing, Noor. So I'm going to provide just a little bit of context for our viewers before me and Noor start talking. So for those who maybe aren't so aware, and for people in Canada especially, to almost a month now, I would say, there was a few families in Jerusalem and Sheikh Jarrah, the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, a very historically prominent Palestinian neighborhood. Some families there they're still currently facing settlers taking over their homes. And so I don't want to call it evictions because a lot of the media has been calling it evictions. Essentially, what's happening is an American-backed organization is pushing to kick them out and take their homes for settlers to join. So that started
Ethnic cleansing, yes.
ethnic cleansing. Exactly. It's not a real estate dispute. It's not a home eviction. It's ethnic cleansing. And it's a continuation, it's not something recent either. We want to make this clear too. And our guest will really touch on that, is that this has been happening for 73 years. It's the only difference now is there's a lot of media coverage, and there's a lot of global condemnation, which is very unique. We'll also get into it. So after Sheikh Jarrah, the Israeli court postponed the date for next month. And so what happened after that, essentially, all the cities in Palestine, so in Haifa, Jaffa, Ramallah, Jerusalem, protests started to erupt in solidarity with the families of Sheikh Jarrah. And even protests started to erupt all over the world, in Canada, in the US, in Europe. People started to host their own actions. And then kind of just the last thing is that Israel started to essentially bomb Gaza and with airstrikes. And a lot of people were killed, over 30 people killed. I think it's at 100 or 200 now. We'll let
In
Noor get in.
Gaza?
Yeah, we'll let Noor get into that. You can, we'll
Yeah,
give her the
because
mic.
it's about 200 people now,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. So the people of Gaza essentially became also part of this part of this ethnic cleansing even more. You know, Gaza is already under a blockade, a land, air, and sea blockade. So that's kind of a little bit of the briefing there for our viewers, and we're gonna start getting into it. Essentially, a lot of the media coverage has been has been very bad in naming what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah and in Gaza the way it is. And so we wanted to give the mic here to a few of our speakers joining us. So Noor, I'm gonna let you go ahead. Essentially, we'll start with a very basic question. Um, let's just get into it. Kind of, how have you been feeling? What is it that you really want to emphasize to people? Because again, you know, Western media hasn't really been reporting on this properly. So I'm gonna let you take it now. You can tell us, you know, how you've been feeling, what families have been feeling. We also don't want to make this kind of like uh, it's not like a victim statement or anything, because you have the power, you have the microphone. So we kind of want to take it in that direction.
Um, okay, where do we start? I think what I'm like mostly everyone in Gaza is feeling a bit consumed, not a bit consumed, a lot. Um, what's really hard about the situation is that you have to actually live it, and then you're exposed to all those stories and pictures and videos on the social media. Um, and so you're like terrified or terrorized at night, and then you wake up and see your friends and family and relatives and your own people bad or even sometimes worse. Um, so I think we're all just really consumed waiting for this to end, hopefully. What I want to say about the media is that not just Western media, even Arab media hasn't been covering this in a very great manner or in a good enough way. So I think the most important source of information is the people themselves. So follow Palestinians, watch their stories, read what they're writing, share their content. I think like the social media is a very powerful. I'm sorry. Yeah. But yeah, I was saying the social media is a very powerful tool, and we have to use it to, I mean, not only raise awareness, but to pressure the oppressors um, to emphasize our narrative. So yeah.
Yeah.
I see lots of people sending me texts that they feel so helpless and they've got nothing to do, but you're not helpless. You can do something. Like, it really doesn't matter how many followers do you have. It's just talking, keeping this alive, the conversations you'll have with your neighbor, the stories on your Instagram account. Every little thing you do really matters. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to add.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Noor. Thank you. Also, for those listening, you can follow Noor on Instagram. Noor, if you wanted, you can add it in the comments too. Noor has been posting some really great updates, and it's again what she said. It's very important for us to be following Palestinians, um, following all kinds of Palestinians, journalists, activists, writers, literally people living there. We've already heard way too much from people in the international sphere. But Noor, thank you for that. I guess like what the other question that I wanted to have, and I think a lot of people in Canada even should probably know is that, oh yeah, thank you. One of our TPFF, she posted the Instagram handles there if you wanted to follow Noor, and our other guests will be joining us in the comment section. So the other thing that most people in Canada don't know is that aside from the fact that there's an occupation in Palestine, and what we're seeing right now is just an extension of 73 years of ethnic cleansing, is that the people in Gaza are very isolated. Sah Noor, it's like, with the
Yeah,
blockade
it's true.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been talking to many international friends, and some of them were shocked that I've never been to Jerusalem or never been to Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it's just I I, I didn't think that it's I don't know. It was just shocking that they did not know, but I cannot blame them, but at the same time I can, because like all the sources are there. Just educate yourselves. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, we cannot visit the West Bank. Like we're locked basically, and we need special permits to get to visit the West Bank or Jerusalem, and our permits are usually declined. So sometimes even when you're just like desperately in need, as a patient, if you want to be treated there, for example, sometimes even patients' permits get declined.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
and it's not just Palestine. It's also the rest of the world, basically. Like the borders are closed almost all the time. They're rarely open, which is why the second my sister called me to come back to Gaza, I went running, because we don't get that chance usually as international students or as people from Gaza generally.
yeah, and I guess if you wanted to touch on Gaza doesn't have an airport, right? Like they used to have one a long time ago. Um,
Yeah, and
but
it's been
now
bombed.
exactly.
Yeah, so
Uh,
yeah, the only way out is there are two ways out. There's Rafah's crossing border, which connects us with Egypt, and that's almost closed all the time. And there's Bet Hanun, which is Ere's crossing border, which connects us to the West Bank, Israel, and it's very hard. You're gonna to pass through there. You're gonna need permits from both Israel and Jordan to get out of there.
Thank you, Noor. Yeah, I think those are some of the two top things that a lot of people don't know, and people from Gaza are always telling them like and posting about it. And so yani, again, I can't emphasize this enough, is for people watching or listening, please follow Palestinians living in Gaza, follow Palestinians living in Jerusalem and Haifa and Yafa. Don't just listen to international voices. Um, Palestinians living there know the best what's going on, and we really do need to let them take the mic. We need to emphasize their updates. They're risking their lives even just posting updates for us, a video, a tweet. Um, and people like Noor, even I think Noor, you posted one of your pictures on your Instagram account, and it was kind of like the picture of your ID, and I think that got a lot of shares everywhere I saw it. And if you can talk a little bit about that post and kind of uh, similarities that people in Gaza have kind of with that.
Yeah. So that post was because ever since the ever since things started to escalate in Gaza, um, it's basic common knowledge to have your emergency backpack prepared so that whatever happens, you just grab it and run. Um, so I've been really avoiding to do so. I've been just like waiting for this to end soon, and then my mom goes like, "Go get your things ready," just in case. And that happened when the bomb started to get really close to our house. Really close, meaning like less than 500 meters away from our house. So that's when like my siblings and I got into our rooms. We started grabbing our things and just like looking through stuff. And I came back here with one small suitcase. So I don't have much. And no matter what we have, we're gonna have to give it up here, you know? And it was just like I grabbed the most important things and I looked at them and there were 5 things and it just like blew my mind that I'm gonna have to give up everything, like my jewelry, my clothes, my books, my journals. They're not, I mean, no matter how important they are, they won't survive. And so I looked at my things and felt like this is a shared struggle. Like all of us have to look at our bedrooms, our walls, our whole houses, the memories, everything including. Because it's not only furniture and walls, it's our whole childhoods, our lives. And so just like thinking about the possibility of losing that in 1 second is not an easy thing to be put under, you know? Yeah, that was like a really difficult moment of realization that my whole life is basically an ID, a passport, and a childhood photo album, and that's all. So yeah, having to be limited into having our whole lives limited into such things is just not fair, really. Yeah, and ever since I shared that, like my friends and people from all around Gaza started sharing their stories with me that they have already like prepared their emergency backpacks, like, and they're sitting like right next to the door, so whatever happens, like you just grab them and run, which is what we have to go through as Gazans.
Thank you for sharing that. I know it's like it's vulnerable to even say. And again, I guess my last question, Noor, here is before we go on to our next guest is, what do you want people to do? What do you, in your opinion at least, what is the most important thing that you want people to do to take action, whether it's, you know, putting pressure on people's governments living in the US or in Canada, to lift the blockade? In your opinion, what is the one thing that you want people to know and to do?
Okay, so the most important thing for people living in the US is to obviously pressure their government because they're pretty much responsible for a lot of what's going on in here. So pressuring your representatives is very important. If you're not living in such places, and even if you are, go outside, protest. Speak, have conversations about Palestine, educate yourself, watch films. If you could, like, read the books, watch the videos, share our videos, our struggles, and our successes as well. So yeah, just like be a part of that.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Noor. Again, this is Nour Al Saqa from
Thank you
Gaza.
for having me.
Thank you. She's an amazing person. Follow her Instagram. Like she's posting these updates for everyone to see. And so, with that being said, Again, thank you, Noor. And please, everyone, I've pinned the Instagram handle so you can follow Noor there and the rest of our guests. And we're
Thank
going
you.
to go to our next guest now, Noor, if you could. And please feel free to stay in touch with the rest of the people joining us. So now we're going to have our next guest, and his name is Rabeea Eid. He's a journalist and a writer from Haifa in Palestine. And so I'm going to bring him on here right now. Okay, just gonna wait. There he is. Hi, Rabeea.
Hello, hi.
How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm good, thank you. So you've probably been watching from the beginning. Um, so I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, Hala, and if you could just give us, a quick intro, where you are, what you're doing, what you've been doing the past few weeks, and then we can kind of go from there.
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me with you in this live. My name is Rabeea Eid. I'm Palestinian from Haifa. I live in Haifa city. I am a journalist and also activist, and I work in a cultural organization, the Arab Cultural Organization in Haifa city. In the last week, I have been participating in all the demonstration here in Haifa. I also was at Bab al Amud at Laylat al Qadr last Saturday, and I've been working with with my colleagues to support what's happening by media, by organizing different things. So that's all.
Okay, Atab. So first question for and some little context for people. So after essentially when the protests started to erupt all over Palestine in support of Sheikh Jarrah, there were protests in Haifa, and so Rabeea, if you can tell us kind of the situation there, what you've been seeing, kind of what you've been reporting from the ground, what are some of the demands of the people who are going to the protest, and essentially what is kind of missing from the coverage. So if you can.
Okay. First of all, what is happening in Palestine 48 is the same thing what is happening in all Palestine. It's an uprising, it's an intifada everywhere against the oppression, the occupation, the colonial apartheid system. And people now going out and raises their voices. So this is what happening in 48. And it's began like with Sheikh Jarrah, people from Palestine 48 went to Sheikh Jarrah like activists to support the people over there. There was a collaboration between Palestinian activists, and this is like something new. We are now seeing it that activists from different places are working together. After that, it begins what happened in Al-Aqsa Mosque. So people in Palestine 48 always have like went to Jerusalem and Al-Aqsa. They go to pray, and the oppression and the violence of the Israeli police also targeted the Palestinians in 48. So it's the same a case now. It's not just the case of the people in Jerusalem. So after that and what happened, people start to organize protests everywhere in the 48, in Haifa, Akka, Led, Ramle, Nazareth, everywhere. And it was surprising. At the beginning, it was organized by activist groups, student groups, feminist groups, and people participated. After that, mainstream people, say, or youth generation started to go out to protest. People, I'm telling you that people that I have seen, they are like 16, 18, in the age of 20, very youthful people, and like they have never participated in protests and demonstrations before. Like this is their first experience and first time they go out and raises their voices. So this is very special moment for the Palestinian people everywhere. People are uniting together, working together. For example, tomorrow there is a big strike that the Palestinians in 48 call the people to strike, and now it's becoming a strike in all of Palestine. So people now are organizing for the strike tomorrow, especially that a lot of Palestinians in the 48, they work because of the citizenship situation that we have, work at Israeli associations or in Israeli hospitals. A lot of Arabs work in Israeli in the hospitals. So the strike tomorrow is going to be big and successful, as I'm like following up the news and what's happening. I have visited some villages today. I was working on a report about the violence of the police against the protests and the people who were arrested. And I've seen different spirit. There is graffiti everywhere, flags of Palestine inside like our cities, and this is something new to see, like flags of Palestine everywhere. Children, I have posted now some picture on my Facebook. Children's with their bikes, they put it like Palestinian flags. So about the demonstration also, until today, like for 1 week, more than 1,000 Palestinians were arrested. Like all the people who were arrested were Arabs. And about 150 Jewish who supported the Palestinians. There was zero arrested Israelis arrested from the right groups or fascist group or settlers who entered our cities and used violence against people and houses. For example, here in Haifa, where do I live now? In my neighborhood in the German colony, they entered here and they like attacked people and houses. They signed the Arab houses from, like, if there was some lights for Ramadan or some Christian symbols on the house, so they knew that it's an Arab house and attacked it under the protection of the Israeli police. And there is a lot of videos that document these attacks, not just in Haifa, in Jaffa, in Akka, in Lod. So some people started also to organize themselves to protect the Arab neighborhood. And we have seen like how the Israeli police have attacked these groups, even though they were peacefully just standing in the neighborhood to protect settlers from entering the neyborhood. Before 3 days, 4 days, there was a lot of cases that we have heard about it and see it in videos, how settlers and fascist groups entered the Arab cities. Sorry, just one moment. A lot of international media now calling I'm participating like every day with the different media to tell what's happening in Haifa and in Palestine 48. I can conclude that people now resisting all the division of the Palestinian people, all the oppression. There is a new generation, and I hope that this uprising continue, and we are now meeting, for example, Palestinian from Gaza and 48, even it's virtually, and from Canada, US, West Bank, together, talking together, doing life together. It's very important to connect and to work together to look for a different future based on justice for Palestine.
Thank you. That was amazing. I wanted to, so maybe some, just in case some of our viewers don't know, is that Rabeea, so in Haifa, he keeps saying 48. And so for viewers who don't know, Palestinians there have Israeli citizenship, and I guess, Rabeea, my question is to you, or kind of for you to give us a little comment, is that so many people, and the media especially, has been reporting on this, saying that, recent clashes with Palestinians from 48, or recent clashes with Palestinians with Israeli citizenship and Israeli police start to arise, right? And so it's essentially, they're trying to frame it as if that's a new thing, right? But what most people should know is that Palestinians with Israeli citizenship they're Palestinian. They're still treated as second-class citizens, even in places like Haifa and Jerusalem and Jaffa. And so that's something else important to note, and also understand that I think that people think that Palestinians in these different parts, in West Bank and those in 48, are divided. And so what Rabeea was saying now is that the reason that this uprising is really taking a lot of power is because all of the Palestinians are coming together, right? So what do you think, or what do you want to say about that, kind of people saying, oh, these are very recent clashes, Palestinians are living comfortably because they have Israeli citizenship?
No, it's not true, and it's like part of the Israeli propaganda that they are always using it in the international media. Palestinians inside Israel are facing like the same politics, Israeli politics, even though like destroying houses, stealing lands by law, by making like special laws out to steal lands. There is a lot of villages in Naqab are not recognized as a villages, so they don't have the basic electricity, water from the government. Many cases Palestinians in 48 are facing, even though we can also see international reports about this in recent reports for B'Tselem, for example, and it's an Israeli organization, and Human Rights Watch, when they talked about Israel as an apartheid regime, they also mentioned the Palestinians inside the so-called Israel. So yes, the importance of what's happening now, that the struggle is including all the Palestinians. We have also had this situation before a few years ago in 2013, when there was a Brother plan. That it's a plan that wanted to take a lot of lands from Arabs in Naqab, and Palestinians inside Israel organized protest, and also a lot of Palestinians supported it. And at the end, the Israeli government stopped this plan after what happened, like in the street when people went down and make protest and close the streets and face the police men. So what's happening now? It's similar but bigger than what happened in Brother Plan. Now we have more people participating. A new generation is participating. The social media is playing an important role with it. So it's important to continue and to organize it more, not just if like now everything is stopped uh, in Gaza or in Jerusalem. That means that we have to go to our old life. No, I think we should continue to work together and to connect to each other and to continue. The struggle need a lot of time and to achieve justice need from us a lot of work.
Amazing. Thank you. And the great point, just to kind of summarize for everyone, is that one of the most important things, I guess, in what Rabeea is saying as well, is how Palestinians are connected all over Palestine right now, and how you can, even from North America and Europe, you can partake in protests happening. You can put pressure on your local representatives and be able to be part of it and to speak about it. And so Rabeea, the last question, just before we end with you here, is that also everyone please make sure to follow him. He posts update from Haifa, and his Instagram handle is just pinned. So Rabeea, the last question here is that what do you think, what are you looking forward to, or what do you kind of see happening with the continuous protests happening in Palestine?
Well, it's I think it's a little bit complicated to know what's going to happen because there is many elements that affect what's going to happen, especially in Gaza. But I think the continuing of going out and organizing protest, and especially also outside Palestine, what we have seen in the last few days, especially at the Nakba days, there were protests all over the world. And it's still continue. It's very important to go and to follow up with the politicians in your countries, to write on the social media, to do advocacy for Palestine. I think you know more like what kind of work should be done, and to think the day after what we need to do as a Palestinians. There should be a Palestinian project for all the Palestinians, especially that the PLOs is not representing all the Palestinians. There is something new should be done, should be work on. So there is a lot of questions. We also, as activists here now, asking these questions: what we should do, how we should deal with the new generation now that is participating, how we should deal with the 1,000 arrested people from the protests. So there is a lot of work.
Thank you so much, Rabeea.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining and listening to Rabeea. Again, please follow him on Instagram, Facebook.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabeea. Take care.
Bye.
So we're going to be moving on to the next portion of our live, which is going to be with Shireen from the Canadian Arab Institute. Shireen, if you could turn on your camera.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Shireen, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dalya, for hosting. Thank you to Toronto Palestine Film Festival. Thank you to Rabeea and to Nour for sharing your impactful stories, your experiences as Palestinians living under apartheid, occupation, and settler colonialism, because that's what this is all about. My name is Shireen Salti. I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Arab Institute. The Canadian Arab Institute is a national, nonpartisan organization focused on the interests and issues of the Canadian Arab community through research, policy, and community engagement. And the Institute strives to become the voice for Canadian Arabs at the federal level of government. So we're very happy to support this talk here that seeks to amplify and center the voices of Palestinians on the ground, like Rabeea and Nour, who are struggling in the fight against injustice. I'm also joining you from the traditional territory of several First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. This is extremely important to recognize because this Canadian government has recognized the rights of Indigenous people on this land. And Palestinians, we have a long way to go to be recognized, to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and to have rights and dignity, humanity, because those are the things that we are fighting for as Palestinians in Canada and abroad. So I'd like to also mention, with that being said, that the fight for against anti-Palestinian racism, of course, is similar to the fight and against anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, and really, you know, all the systemic barriers that you know, Muslims and Jews face against white supremacy. So we are really against anti-Semitism, anti-Black racism, anti-Arab racism, and including anti-Palestinian racism in all its forms. Why I'm saying this now more than ever is because we are seeing Palestinians and Arabs in Canada right now being targeted and being smeared for speaking up. So I can't thank you guys, the courageous Palestinians that were with us on the call today, Nour and Rabeea, for speaking up. You are indeed, like Dalya said, risking your life to speak up. And we will not stand by and watch you do that without amplifying your voice. I believe as Arab Canadians, our responsibility and the bare least that we can do is uplift your voices. And I know that sounds tokenistic right now, but we need everyone to understand how impactful it can be, even if they can just share their posts on social media, if they can call their member of parliament, if they can really ensure that they are trying to do anything they can in their power as individuals or as leaders in their organizations or in any capacity they have in their institutions or represented in places that they represent, communities they represent, to really center Palestinian voices. Again, I'd like to explain this as the head of the Canadian Arab Institute. It's really, really important. We're seeing online hate. We're seeing Palestinian Canadians being censored. We're seeing Palestinian Canadians being targeted by the JDL, which is a terrorist organization in the United States, but not in Canada. And whenever they, you know, come out to protest, they are diminishing our voices as Palestinians in the diaspora. And we need as many allies as we can right now that are watching, who are non-Arab, who are non-Palestinian, who are really interested in learning more about our cause and what we need from you to join in solidarity. We need you to explain that our fight is one of humanity, one of dignity, one of true justice, and really understanding that the fight is intersectional, that Palestinian women are facing much more injustices than just Palestinian men in the country, because they're, you know, facing injustices on different types of levels. We are very, very happy with the solidarity we're seeing in Canada from the queer community, from the Sikh community, from the Pakistani community, from the Iranian community. I want to let Nour and Rabeea know that you have solidarity from a lot of communities across the country, and that in and of itself is an intifada. It is a revolution among non-Palestinians and non-Arabs this time, and that for us is what meant you know, a true revolution in the West. So I'll stop there. I'll let Dalya, you know, ask me any other question that she'd like in my capacity as the Canadian Arab Institute. We did put out a statement. I'm happy to read it and explain our position and what we want Canadians to be doing right now. But Dalya, again, thank you so much for hosting. And Rabeea and Nour, our hearts are with you. We will continue to fight for you and to amplify your voice. And really take care. يعني مش عارفة إيش هقولكم, because I have family also there that are extremely affected by what's going on, and my phone hasn't stopped, and I can imagine that this is you know, part of the Arab experience for many Arab Canadians, not just Palestinian, whereby we're constantly on our phone thinking about what we can do here, having survivor's guilt, but also thinking about our people back home.
Thank you, Shireen. I guess kind of just jumping off your point, Hala, what we want um, Canadians to do or just people to do. I think for our viewers and for people listening to know is that Canada plays a huge part in the Israeli occupation and enforcing it too. Um, and even so, Palestinians living in Canada have to deal with censorship, anti-Palestinian legislation, smear campaigns, and then they also have to deal with like essentially trying to uplift the people back home. And so, the most important thing to know is that our taxpayer dollars are going to fund the Israeli occupation. And so, what's something that many people here can do, something very simple, is following a Palestinian-led movement, which is the BDS movement. So boycott, divestment, sanctions. You can very easily look that up on bdsmovement.com. It gives you a list of companies that are complicit and profit from illegal settlements in Palestine. And off the top of my head, an example would be Ben & Jerry's ice cream, Victoria's Secret, McDonald's. There's tons of companies out there. BDS is very simple, you know. It's if you feel like you're helpless or you can't do much, you can very easily start with a BDS. You can even bring it to a campus. You can organize a BDS campaign wherever you are, essentially pressure your own country. And so that's kind of a lot of the things Palestinians are asking for is BDS, you know. If someone's asking you what to do, that's something very simple. Another thing what Shireen and CAI do too, I'll let you speak to that as well, is essentially connecting with your representatives, collecting with your local MPs, email them, you know. Oftentimes people don't really email them. And so essentially it's a good thing because you can actually kind of get in there before they get like hundreds of emails, right? You can email your state reps. You can essentially ask for a meeting with them. Tell them you have concerns, essentially pressure them to end Israeli military sales and kind of pressure Canada to actually end the occupation. And for me personally, my own opinion, I'm not saying that I have complete faith that Canada will end the occupation, but what we can do from here is to pressure the government to actually to alleviate the pressure that's going on in Palestine. So that starts with ending illegal settlements, pressuring Canadian government and your local officials to end military arms sales. Even Canada sells drones to Israel, and they buy drones from Israel. That's another thing that literally is violence against Palestinians. So another thing is also the Toronto Palestine Film Festival has an amazing resource list called Nakba 73 Resources. I suggest everyone follow the Instagram page and go on the website to really look into those resources. And Shireen, I guess, the last question that I want to ask you, or a comment from you, is that what do you think that people can do from Canada, and what is something that should be emphasized more that the media has been missing, and especially just, you know, living in a place that is also complicit in indigenous violence and another settler country. So what is it that you want to say to people to push them to do something, even for those people who don't really have too much information? Shireen, I can't hear you. I don't know if
Sorry,
it's
I was on mute.
okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I said thank you so much, Dalya, for sharing those important resources. It's very important that people joining us today have access to those resources and understand the importance of sharing them around and spreading the word as much as possible. Sorry, one moment, please.
Okay.
Sorry, we're actually on the calls with media as it stands. We're on the calls with members of parliament and with members of Canadian media, and that brings me to my next point: is the importance of really flooding the inboxes of members of parliament, ensuring that they understand the power of community, that they understand that there is a Palestinian community or just a community that is supportive of Palestinian human rights and is supportive of human rights, period. Yesterday, I was in a meeting with 2 members of parliament where I asked, you know, and at first I shared my story. You know, I was born and raised in Jerusalem, in Palestine, and I moved to Canada when I was 15 years old in 2009. At the age of 23, I worked as a nonpartisan Ontario legislature intern. And as an Arab Canadian with a parliamentary background, I do have faith in our legislatures and democratic institutions. And I do believe that Canada can do better. And as someone who has worked for Canadian international human rights experts in the Ontario legislature and across the country, I did ask the Canadian government why they continue to intervene in the International Criminal Court decision to investigate Israeli war crimes. Because if not the International Criminal Court, who is best to investigate Israel for their war crimes? Where are the Palestinians supposed to turn for justice? And that is extremely important to talk about in those emails to your members of parliament. Why is Canada not following their legal obligation as a country? This is not just about Canada caring for humanity. This is also about their legal obligation at the international level of government. So I want people to know also when they are reaching out to members of parliament is what are they talking about? What are they pressuring the government to do? That is one tangible ask, to understand that, you know, this is their legal obligation, that the International Criminal Court does have a jurisdiction to investigate Israeli war crimes. And they do not, in fact, lack jurisdiction like the Canadian government has been arguing. So that's one. I think there's other asks that the, you know, Arab Canadian community would like to see the Canadian government put forward that are very tangible asks, such as canceling contracts of Israeli drones, such as, you know, banning trades with illegal settlement expansions. You know, the Canadian government votes in support of Palestinians' right to self-determination at the UN level in the past year or in the past 2 years. But it's contradictory given that they also trades, given that 17% of their exports also go to Israel every year. So we do see this double standard, and we need to have tangible asks for them so that they know how we can actually get to a two-state solution, if that's kind of the goal in their mind, is a peaceful state whereby 2 people are residing beside one another, right? So I really hope that the Canadian government listens to this. When you call them, you can check out numerous organizations that have put out members of parliament's contact information, but think who's in your riding, because that's usually the most influential way of going about it, is who represents me. I'm a constituent. I have a voice as a constituent, and I can do something about this. As well, the Canadian media. You know, if you are seeing a certain narrative in Canadian media that you do not agree with, such as the fact that, you know, here's what Muslims want and here's what Jews want, and we're going to listen to Muslims. You know, for me as a Palestinian Christian, I find that narrative extremely, extremely dehumanizing for a lot of Palestinian Christians that are losing their lives. You know, it's not just a Muslim-Jewish issue. Again, this is about human rights. This is about dignity. This is about, you know, understanding that the folks in Gaza, like Rabeea and Nour, who spoke earlier actually from Gaza, you know, it's not stopping. The bombs are continuing to drop. The Israel Prime Minister has said no to a ceasefire. This is not ending. This is not going to end anytime soon. We need, instead of putting out statements and sympathy, and Canadian media really talking about this narrative of 2 just people fighting together on equal sides as if they have equal sharing power or so is completely wrong. And we need to debunk these myths about what's happening in Palestine, about what's happening for our people and what our people are facing in Western media. I do believe that this narrative is changing. I think it's because of powerful advocates like Dalya Masri. I believe it's like powerful journalists that are really speaking up and shaping the views of Canadian media. So we need more of Dalya Masri. We need more Dalya Masris out there. Right now, if every person can email every media outlet and speak up really and say, what is it? What is my problem with this headline? What is my problem with this article? And be very polite, but also do not forget, reach out and thank the ones that have said something morally and ethically, good for you, you know, in the sense that if someone did stand up for Palestinian rights, thank them, say thank you. And even if they said something that was somewhat good but not so good, you know, you can still say thank you and say, you know, but however, I don't agree with this one word or this one term, and here's why language is important for us. Because really, this is about a narrative, and this is about raising awareness and shaping the views of people about what's happening abroad from evidence-based viewpoints. And that brings me to my last and final point: share our statements. The Canadian Arab Institute has called what's happening in Israel apartheid based on the Human Rights Watch report, as well as an Israeli human rights organization called Beit Salem. It is very evident from the legal and technical briefings that I got with the heads of those organizations that this is in fact apartheid, that we need, as a Canadian Arab Institute, a national nonpartisan organization that's focused on evidence and research, to let everybody know what the research is saying and what the facts are. And the facts are very clear. There's an occupier and there's an occupied people. There's a colonizer and colonized people. And I will end it there because I think that's powerful enough. Again, Dalya, thank you so much for this opportunity, and TPFF and Palestine Youth Movement for all your work. Nour and Rabeea, again, you're in our hearts, and we're here with you. We're going to fight every second of the way, and we won't stop until we see true peace and justice for our people, the Palestinian people.
Thank you, Shireen. A few points to just clarify in the comments. So people wanted to know what BDS, someone was asking about the acronym. So again, BDS is the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions Movement, a Palestinian-led movement by Omar Barghouti, and it was created in the early 2000s by Palestinian civil society. And so one of the easiest ways that you can essentially support Palestinians is to boycott, divest, and also pressure your governments and your countries to place sanctions on Israel. And the other thing some questions have been is essentially tomorrow there's a general strike, and the general strike is coming out of Palestine. And so May 18th, there's going to be protests all over the country, in both the US, in Canada, in Europe. So you can go to the Palestinian Youth Movement to see if there's a protest in your city. Maybe if there's no protest in your city, make one. If you feel like you don't have any support, reach out to your local organizations, reach out to your community members. It doesn't have to be a protest, doesn't have to be a rally. It can be something as simple as a vigil. It can be sending emails to your MPs. It can be sharing something on Twitter, something on Instagram. You know, it essentially try to partake in something happening tomorrow, because we in the diaspora need to do our best to amplify people from Palestine, and we need to alleviate the pressure Palestinians are facing under occupation by doing our part, whether it's in Canada and the US, because again, these governments are very complicit in Palestinian oppression, and they have ties with the Israeli government. So it's very important to understand our place in this country, our place on also stolen land. And again, Palestinians seek support from oppressed communities like the indigenous community and the Black community, and all of our freedom is tied together. So that I wanted to end off with that. And if anyone else has a question, sorry, I'm reading through people's comments. Okay, great comments. Thank you so much, everyone. They're actually really nice comments. So we've pinned the comment for everyone who joined us today. Our other viewer, our other guest, Jalal, who is a writer from Jerusalem, was unfortunately unable to make it today. So we're going to have him for another live. Hopefully, stay tuned with the Toronto Palestine Film Festival, and with Nour and Rabeea from Gaza and Haifa. And again, thank you so much for joining, and I'm going to end it here.